He was a Hollywood heartthrob who broke every rule in the studio playbook. Long before public acceptance of same-gender relationships, William Haynes dared to live his truth right on Tinseltown's doorstep. In a time when even an offhand rumor could destroy a career, he clung to real love more tightly than his own fame. This is the story of the star who refused to play pretend off-screen and paid a tremendous price. But his legacy extends far beyond the films he left behind. Early life and bold first steps. William Billy Haynes was born in 1900 in a small Virginia town. At first glance, his upbringing looked ordinary. Two working parents, a modest home, and local movie theaters where he could pass the time. But under the surface, he wasn't like anyone else around him. From an early age, Haynes knew two things about himself. He adored motion pictures, and he wasn't interested in the same romances that dazzled his peers. By 14, his home life felt too small for his big dreams. Convinced the future had more to offer, he did something drastic for a teenager in the early 1900s. He ran away. More surprising, he fled with another young man who he openly called his romantic partner. In an era where even discussing such relationships risked persecution, Haynes refused to hide. Together, they found work in a DuPont factory to survive. But William wanted more than a meager paycheck. He was hungry for a taste of adventure and the glamour he'd seen flicker across the silver screen. To bolster their income, he and his partner opened a dance hall in a nearby town. Rumors suggest it might have been a lot more than dancing that brought customers inside. That brief brush with seedy business showed him how far he was willing to go for the life he craved. The scheme didn't last. Local authorities tracked him down, urging him to return to his family, but he refused. The boldness that later defined his Hollywood career was already vivid in him at 15. Still, bigger changes loomed. When a fire swept through much of the town in 1915, Haynes escaped to New York City, leaving behind every bit of his old life. Discovery and rapid rise in Hollywood. New York offered endless distractions, and Haynes welcomed them all. He settled in Greenwich Village, home to an underground gay community where he felt more at ease. Odd jobs came and went, but he had one advantage many people noticed instantly: a face that lit up any room. That face got him spotted by a talent scout organizing the New Faces of 1922 contest for Goldwyn Pictures. In an instant, his life shifted. By the mid-1920s, Haynes was in Hollywood, forging a path under the emerging MGM brand. His earliest roles were small and often went unnoticed, but fate had other plans for him. He soon starred in The Midnight Express and then landed a breakout role in Brown of Harvard. Suddenly, the industry pegged him as the charming, slightly arrogant leading man who audiences loved to see get knocked down a peg by the final reel. He had a niche: comedic, self-assured, and undeniably appealing. During this climb, he befriended Joan Crawford, another rising name. The two clicked immediately. Haynes gave her a playful nickname, Cranberry, and she would become both a loyal friend and later an unexpected ally in the darkest hours of his life. By the late 1920s, William Haynes was a bona fide star. Critics praised his wit, audiences adored him, and the studios started doling out bigger budgets for his films. But beneath the spotlight, he was harboring a secret that wasn't really a secret at all: Defiance and Love. Hollywood was a factory for illusions. Studios manipulated not just what was on screen, but how stars lived and whom they dated, strictly for publicity. As Haynes's fame grew, reporters demanded to know which Hollywood actress had captured his heart. They assumed some glamorous romance was fueling his bright grin. Behind the scenes, he had already met the true love of his life. In 1926, on a promotional trip to New York, he locked eyes with Jimmy Shields. Shields was a striking young man who might have been working on the streets for income. Records are murky. Regardless of where he came from, he stepped into Haynes's world with instant chemistry. Haynes invited Shields to move to Los Angeles with him, promising a chance at small film roles. But as soon as Jimmy arrived, he discovered he wasn't interested in acting, and maybe he wasn't seduced by the bright lights at all. Instead, he devoted himself to William, often visiting sets just to bring homemade lunches and spend time together. Their openness was downright scandalous for the era. To dodge the tabloids, Haynes occasionally claimed he had a crush on a female friend, like actress Polly Moran. But that was as far as he was willing to go in terms of deceit. In private, and sometimes even in semi public, he and Jimmy were inseparable. Industry insiders whispered about it. Some found it scandalous, others admired Haynes's confidence, but he knew it was only a matter of time before the studio heads confronted him. The studio ultimatum and the aftermath. By 1930, Hollywood was changing fast. Silent stars were vanishing if their voices didn't impress in new talkies, but Haynes had a pleasant voice that transferred well to sound. His career could have soared even higher in this new era. Then came the production code, also called the Hays Code, enforcing a strict moral standard on and off the screen. Suddenly, it wasn't enough to project wholesomeness in movies. The studios expected it from their actors' private lives, too. MGM boss Louis B. Mayer took a particularly keen interest in William Haynes. Mayer's plan was simple: push Haynes into a marriage with a female co star, any co star, really. The public needed the illusion of a hetero happy ending. At first, Haynes tried to conform, even proposing to his friend Anita Page in a half hearted attempt to appease the studio. She turned him down, likely aware of why he was asking in the first place. Things only got more complicated one night in 1933 when Haynes drove through Los Angeles and picked up a male hitchhiker. The authorities soon caught them in a compromising situation, and the tabloids had a field day. Louis B. Mayer wasted no time giving Haynes an ultimatum: marry a woman or lose your career. Standing in the office of a Hollywood titan would intimidate most people, but not William Haynes. The story goes that he stared Mayer down and said he would remain by Jimmy Shields' side no matter the consequences. He walked out of MGM, losing his contract and the multi-film deals he had once taken for granted. Haynes believed his fame alone would keep him afloat. He could sign with lesser studios, continue acting, and one day return to the top. But those smaller companies were called Poverty Row for a reason. The budgets were tiny, distribution was limited, and it became painfully clear that mainstream Hollywood had turned its back on him. After a handful of forgettable films, he made a drastic choice: walk away from acting altogether. Reinvention and violence. During the final years of his acting career, Haynes had already begun exploring a secondary passion: interior design. Part owner of an antique shop, he discovered a flair for picking out exquisite pieces and transforming living spaces. Encouraged by starlets who admired his taste, he pivoted fully into the design world. Joan Crawford, by then a major Hollywood powerhouse, asked him to decorate her home. Impressed, she told everyone about his incredible skill, and soon his phone rang nonstop with requests from big names. Yet, just as William and Jimmy seemed to find a peaceful niche, a horrifying event shattered their sense of safety. In 1936, a young boy found the couple's runaway dog. Grateful, Haynes gave him a few cents as a thank you gesture. To most people, that might have seemed innocent, but the boy's family twisted the story. They claimed something sinister had taken place, and rumors spread like wildfire. A mob of around 100 people reportedly showed up at Haynes's and Shields's house, dragged them outside, and assaulted them violently. No real evidence supported the bizarre allegations, but hatred fed on fear, and the local crowd wanted blood. Bruised and shaken, Haynes and Shields survived the attack. Powerful friends, including newspaper tycoon William Randolph Hearst's partner, Marion Davies, demanded legal action. But Haynes and Shields decided not to press charges, preferring to let the matter fade rather than wage a public war. In the end, authorities found no grounds to prosecute the couple. The real criminals, those who had beaten them, walked away without punishment. It was a brutal reminder that living openly came at a steep cost, even beyond the career opportunities he had sacrificed. Triumph as an interior designer. Despite the assault, Haynes didn't retreat from the public eye altogether. He continued to build his design business, and word of his impeccable taste spread. Jack L. Warner of Warner Brothers hired him to redesign his home. The results were lavish and sophisticated, solidifying Haynes's reputation as one of the most sought-after designers in Hollywood and beyond. Soon, his clientele featured an impressive roster of international names. He tackled the Winfield House in London, the residence of the U.S. ambassador, leaving a lasting impression of style and refinement. Movie directors also noticed incorporating William Haynes selected pieces into iconic sets. One prime example was Gone with the Wind, which showcased items from his collection in its famous plantation scenes. While he was no longer in front of the camera, Haynes was still shaping Hollywood's image. His knack for creating elegant atmospheres blended perfectly with the era's glamorous aesthetic. Deep down, he may have known this was a second act no one could have predicted. Once a leading man forced out by prejudice, he was now a tastemaker for the very industry that had cut him off. Final days and tragic end. When World War II erupted, Haynes didn't hesitate. He signed up to serve. Many young men never returned from the global conflict, but fate was kinder to him. He came back, ready to reclaim the life he had built with Jimmy. By the time he re-entered civilian life, he and Shields were an established fixture in elite social circles, and they continued to enjoy the fruits of his successful design business. Their close friend Joan Crawford once famously called them the happiest married couple in Hollywood, even though no marriage license recognized them at the time. Decades of devotion bound them together. But time was catching up. By the early 1970s, Haynes's health declined. Doctors diagnosed him with lung cancer, likely due to a lifetime of smoking. On December 26, 1973, William Haynes took his final breath with Jimmy by his side. Their partnership had lasted nearly half a century, an astounding length even by modern standards, and almost unimaginable in the Hollywood of the early 20th century. Tragically, Jimmy Shields couldn't cope with life without him. Just a few months later, he made the heartbreaking decision to end his own life. In a final note, he wrote about his despair and how impossible it felt to go on alone. The man who had once been so content delivering lunches to his beloved was now completely bereft. His final words testified to a love story Hollywood never fully acknowledged, but could never truly erase. William Haynes stands as a remarkable figure not just for his success, but for the integrity he showed when the stakes were highest. At a time when film studios demanded complete control over their actors' personal lives, he looked the biggest boss in Hollywood squarely in the eye and refused to live in hiding. He lost an A-list career but gained decades of genuine love, companionship, and ultimately a fulfilling second act as a world-class interior designer. His life reminds us of the costs of authenticity when society clings to prejudice. Long before there were pride parades or progressive legislation, Haynes embodied a quiet rebellion simply by being himself. He never returned to the silver screen, but his story resonates in every acceptance speech where an actor proudly thanks a same gender partner. It resonates in every film that dares to challenge the status quo. In some ways, William Haynes was a pioneer who proved that personal integrity sometimes outshines professional ambition. Though he faced persecution, violence, and the heartbreak of an untimely passing, he spent his life on his own terms. That fearless spirit remains his real legacy. As we look back, we can see that the man once advertised as Hollywood's charming, wise guy was actually its most courageous romantic. The old system tried to bury him, but his legend endures. And so does the lesson that living openly, even when it costs everything, can become the greatest role of all.